January is a hopeful time of year. And most people will start 2025 with a fresh slate, high expectations, lofty goals for the year. Unfortunately, most people will fail to keep their New Year's resolutions by the third week of January. So I have a template for you, though, that can help shrink the odds of failure down to zero. So in this video, I'm going to bring you in on the process that I go through every December and January so you too can create unstoppable progress this year. What you're going to see are the review questions that I work through, and I'm going to walk you through those one by one. And then I'm going to give you the final journal prompt that's going to tie it all together and turn those answers into action that leads to real outcomes. Before you start the process, look back over the last 12 months. Review your calendar, review your bank account, review your Google Photos memories. Then get a fancy journal like mine. My wife bought this for me a couple years back, and now I go to Barnes & Noble every December, and I like to get one of these nice handmade Italian leather journals and get a fancy pen, and you're ready to go. We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. If you're like me, you like to run fast and juggle a lot of balls at the same time, constantly moving. Problem though is you run into failure pretty quick, and then you blame it on everyone and everything except you and your lack of preparation. In my coaching work with clients, what I've noticed is that most of the time they get insights because they were able to pause long enough to reflect on their experience. One of the benefits of this process is that it's going to get you to slow down long enough to look at what's really happening. You see, sometimes you don't need to run faster. You just need to drop the bricks that are slowing you down. So let's find out what those bricks are for you, and let's dive into the questions. So we start off with, what are you most proud of, personally and professionally? You can split these up into a couple of different categories for personal and professional. Add other categories if you'd like. If you can't pick one, or if one doesn't really come to mind, just jot down everything that you think of that will meet this criteria that you'll be proud of. And you can go back over those answers and highlight what jumps out at you. The next question is, what is the hardest thing you had to overcome, and what did you learn from it? And here I would probably jot down what I did was jot down several challenges that I overcame. And then again, go back over that and look and see what probably jumps up at the top of the list there as the hardest thing that you had to overcome. Next two questions go together as a nice pair, and they come from a really powerful exercise that is probably the most favorite among my clients. First one is, what and who energized you the most? And then paired with that is, what and who drained you the most? These come from an exercise I like to do with my clients called the energy audit. And what you do is you just draw a line down on the paper, and you put these two headings or questions at the top and start to just make a list for each one. Then kind of following on that is, what are 1 to 3 activities or habits that created 80% of your success, happiness, and health? This, for those of you who are familiar with the 80-20 rule, might be kind of an echo of that. And it's an interesting application of that rule where we're looking at the 20% of things that you're doing that are creating 80% of the positive results. And tied in with that is, who are the 3 to 5 people in your life that have helped you produce 80% of your results? Think of clients, colleagues, friends, and loved ones. Now, most people usually think about the positive side of this, but this question takes you over to the negative side, which I think is just as valuable, which is, what are the 1 to 3 activities or habits that created 80% of your problems, your unhappiness, and your poor physical, mental health. It's just as important to know what's the 20% of things that are causing 80% of those bad results, so that you can then focus in on dropping some of those things. Next is, what goals did you not accomplish and what got in the way? If you can't think back as far as the 12 months, or maybe you didn't have any goals at that point, go back as far as you can, as your memory will allow. Maybe look back over the last 90 days or 6 months. Look at some goals that you had, or hopes or expectations that you had for this year that didn't pan out, and ask yourself what got in the way. Why did it happen? How are you different at the end of this year from 12 months ago? When I was working through this question, I just thought about everything that I've learned, advice I've gotten, conversations, people I've met, experiences I've had, challenges, and reflected on that and thought about, hey, what do I now know? What do I now believe? What have, given the things that I've accomplished or overcome, what does that mean for me? And who am I now at the end of that process, 12 months from that point? What coincidences, lucky moments, or miracles occurred this year for you? And how did you create them? This is probably one of the most fun questions, I think, in the list for me, because despite why I started working this process, the reason why I continue to do it is because of the things that are unexpected that happen along the way. The more planning, the more work I do, the more reflection, the more writing, journaling, the more it seems to kind of create and expand the space for those unexpected opportunities to come my way. I've had things happen this year where I've connected with other colleagues and have had opportunities just come across my path that I wasn't even thinking about or couldn't even imagine. But I think that because of this work, it helped prepare me to see it and take advantage of it. What is one thing that you spent money on that provided the most value? What was the highest ROI spent? How did you waste the most money? Just as important to think about, what did you spend money on that didn't pan out? Or especially things that you were continuing to spend money on that you knew weren't valuable. And one thing that you might want to ask yourself is, what's keeping you from cutting that expense, from dropping that membership or canceling that subscription? You've probably lost count of the questions, but there are a dozen questions there in that list. And if you're thinking that this is a process that's going to take a long time to complete, you're right. But this will be worth it for you when you take your answers to those questions and you use them to answer this final journal prompt. Making progress in 2025 is about taking the right actions and taking them consistently throughout the year. That is, you have to focus on doing the right things and doing them the right number of times. Now, we need to build a bridge from those reflections to action items. So you're going to go back over your answers and you're going to think about, how did you feel as you were answering them, physically, emotionally? What was coming up for you? What are you remembering that you forgot or that you pretended not to know? What's now clear to you after answering those questions? Because you're going to take all that and use that to answer this final journal prompt, where you write down the 1 to 3 insights that have come up for you. The insights that you got from this process are your key takeaways. They are the bright neon signs pointing to you what works and what's distracting you. At the end of 2022, when I first went through this process myself, I realized how much time, money, and energy I was wasting on things like coaching programs, software, and people who were costing me progress in my business. I saw that my progress came from a few key activities like making lead calls, writing my weekly prospect emails, and connecting with people online. So I started 2023 with a lot of clarity and focus about what was going to grow my business. And once I started focusing on those key progress making activities, my revenue almost doubled. And this was in a year where interest rates shot up and the markets had crashed. And so in a year where my revenue could have declined by as much as 30%, my revenue actually increased by 75%. Laying the foundation is a good start, but stopping here at the first part of this process is only going to set yourself up for failure. There's a reason why people fail to meet their New Year's goals so quickly. So you want to make sure that you go on to parts 2 and 3 of this process, which is going to help you define clear goals that matter to you and set you up for a 2025 where you're likely to see some life-changing outcomes. I talk about it in this video here, which you can get to with the link here in the video or down below in the comment section. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Thank you, and let me know how it goes.